What is freedom? In 1984, this question lingers around the edges of so many conversations. Is freedom Winston's ability to buy a diary and write in it? I mean, he's able to do those things. As he points out, nothing's actually illegal. Is freedom the ability to go to the pub, hang out the laundry, have as many babies as you want, and go about your daily business like the proles do? In fact, on page 72, we're told only the animals and the proles are free. Is freedom even a positive virtue in 1984? Trying to figure out how 1984 understands freedom forces us to wrestle with this question in a really deep sort of way. Like, is freedom the ability to choose things for oneself? Because if it is, in some ways, there's a lot of freedom in 1984. As I said, Winston can choose to buy a diary. He can choose to go to O'Brien's. He can choose to go to the pub and talk to the proles. But there's all sorts of things he can't choose. And it's those things that he can't choose for himself that seem to create the biggest sense of tension within him. He can't choose what memories are real and what memories aren't. He's forced, in fact, his work is to correct party information that actually falsifies the past. And he knows he's doing it. And it's glossed over as correcting misprints or misinformation or misquotes. But he knows that he's actually changing his real memories of what things were like. He isn't free to be true to his own experience. We also see that he isn't free to use language the way he wants to. In fact, that's the whole thing with Newspeak. In Oceana, we're told on page 53 that orthodoxy means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness. So there's the sense that you're free so long as you don't think, but thinking is what you're not allowed to do. But according to O'Brien toward the end, it's that very thinking that actually binds Winston, that makes him not free. That if he would just agree in his head to Big Brother's goodness, then he could be as free as he wants to be, to do what he wants to do. For Julia and for Winston, we start to see that the freedom to form interpersonal ties is a marker of true freedom. And that's what the party's really pushing against. So if you look on page 65 of this particular edition, you will find that the party's aim was not merely to prevent men and women from forming loyalties, which it might not be able to control. Its real undeclared purpose was to remove all pleasure from the sexual act. Not love so much as eroticism was the enemy, inside marriage as well as outside of it. Lower down, permission was always refused for marriage if the couple gave the slightest impression of being physically attracted to one another. The only recognized purpose of marriage was to beget children for the service of the party. And this is really telling, because one of the things we'll see coming up over and over again is the ability to form deep interpersonal connections, especially those connections that are marked by sex and that are marked by the ability for procreation, are what seem to be most problematic in dystopias. And you notice that it's okay to beget children, but the party wants to turn kids against their parents as early as possible. And this is why Mr. Parsons' kids are like always, they're learning to be junior spies, right? To listen at peepholes, to report on their parents. Because it's those loyalties to anything other than the party that threaten the stability of the party and threaten the stability of Oceana entirely. So what is freedom then? Does freedom just become the ability to love and to have interpersonal ties? Is that the fundamental freedom that gets squashed in 1984? Quite possibly. I also, though, wonder, is it even deeper than that? Is what really makes freedom freedom in 1984 the ability to be free from being watched? To have, as Winston puts it at one point, one's own life. In Oceana, that marks you as eccentric, as weird, as problematic, to go for a walk by oneself, to have one's own thoughts. That sort of deep privacy of the self, the inches between your ears. That's the place of real freedom. And perhaps what helps us to understand why the pervasive surveillance is so deeply disturbing. Maybe freedom really does come down to the ability to have that own space within yourself, your own sense of self. And so being able to write, being able to think your own thoughts, being able to have your own memories, being able to form deep human attachments with partners and with children, maybe all of that is just an outworking of that deep, deep human need to not be watched all the time, to not be surveilled. And if that's freedom, that brings us to a really interesting question then for the Christian tradition, right? Because what does it mean that God is watching us all the time? What is human freedom? And in what ways have we maybe misunderstood freedom? Does Orwell's book uncover for us what we actually mean and think about when we say freedom, but does that also uncover something slightly problematic? Does it also uncover, interwoven with our desire for freedom, a desire for a sort of godlike power, where we can escape everyone else and be completely independent? Think about this. What does it mean for you to be free? And is that freedom really freedom, or are you just agreeing to a different set of rules and regulations when you have that freedom? At the end of the book, Winston and Julia are truly free. They can meet if they want. They could have sex if they want. No one's watching them. Nobody cares anymore. In fact, they know that somebody might be watching them, somebody might be listening, but nobody cares. That's the more important thing, right? No one seems to be watching, and definitely no one cares. But here's the thing, they both have been totally broken. They have betrayed their deepest loyalties to each other. They have even come to a place of loving Big Brother. And so now they're free. But is that really freedom? They could choose whatever they want at this stage. But the only thing they want to choose is what Big Brother wants for them.